This is NASA television.
Good evening and welcome back to the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour the team of flight controllers on duty here, working in concert with their Russian counterparts half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, are counting down the minutes prior to the deorbit burn of the Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft that will begin the journey home for Soyuz Commander Gennady Padalka, NASA flight engineer Joe Akaba, and Russian cosmonaut Sergei Revin as they wrap up 125 days in space, 123 of which were spent as crewmates on board the International Space Station. At this hour, the Soyuz vehicle has moved to a position about 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station as the two craft fly some 252 statute miles above the Earth over the western Pacific Ocean, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Their intended target is a remote area of the Earth just to the north of the town of Arkalyk, Kazakhstan, where search and recovery forces are in the process of deploying to the landing site to begin recovery operations as soon as the Soyuz vehicle touches down. That landing is scheduled at 9:52 and 35 seconds p.m. Central Time, 10:52 and 35 seconds p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 8:52 and 35 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Monday morning. At the landing site in Kazakhstan, dawn broke about 20 minutes ago. Sunrise is underway at the landing site, where the weather conditions are virtually ideal. Virtually no clouds, just some scattered clouds in the area. Temperatures right now are hovering around the 60-degree Fahrenheit mark. They're expected to be in about the mid-60-degree mark by the time the Soyuz vehicle touches down on the steppe of Kazakhstan. There is virtually no wind. At landing time, the wind is expected to be about 6 knots. That's it from the southwest. Virtually ideal conditions as the search and recovery forces of the Rosaviatsia team, joined by NASA landing personnel, are in the process of moving into position. Yesterday, 6 out of 12 helicopters flew to the town of Arkalyk from the staging city of Kustanai, just over the Russian border in northern Kazakhstan. Some of those recovery personnel spent the night in Arkalyk. Those are the helicopters that will be first to deploy to the landing site in a racetrack pattern to greet the Soyuz capsule and to watch it descend under its main chute. Other helicopters are now in the process of going airborne from Kustanai for about an hour and 50-minute flight. They took off just a few minutes ago. In all, 8 out of the 12 helicopters associated with the search and recovery time, the wind is expected to be about 6 knots. That's it from the southwest. Virtually ideal conditions as the search and recovery forces of the Rosaviatsia team, joined by NASA landing personnel, are in the process of moving into position. Yesterday, site to the southwest of the prime landing site. That ballistic site would be the zone in which the Soyuz would touch down in the unlikely event a problem with the Soyuz capsule after its deorbit burn would have it fall short of its intended target. And 2 other helicopters will be directly over the ballistic site itself, ready to pick up the crew again if they fall short of their intended target. But the Soyuz vehicle has been trustworthy and has been in excellent shape throughout its preparations. Its undocking a short time ago left the craft in excellent shape as the crew aboard the Soyuz vehicle in the descent module in their Sokol launch and entry suits are preparing for the deorbit burn that will begin the ride home to that landing site and a return to Earth after 125 days in space. Strapped into their seats in that descent module in the center seat is Soyuz commander Gennady Padalka. Padalka wrapping up his 4th flight into space and a total of 711 days in his 4 missions, putting him 4th on the all-time list of the most traveled space explorers behind Sergei Krikalev, Alexander Kaleri, and Sergei Avdeyev. In fact, Padalka received a phone call about 30 minutes ago from Krikalev from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. Krikalev reporting to Padalka that all the reports from the landing site show excellent weather, reading up some data for the Soyuz vehicle to update altimeter readings. Krikalev reporting that there's virtually no wind at the landing site in clear skies, very quiescent conditions that are expected to greet Padalka and his crewmates at the time of touchdown 1 hour and 16 minutes from now. Strapped in to his seat in the descent module to the left of Padalka is first-time space traveler Sergei Revin, the Russian cosmonaut, who is wrapping up 125 days in space. And to the right of Padalka, Joe Acaba, the NASA flight engineer, completing his 2nd mission into space, 13 days aboard the shuttle Discovery on the STS-119 mission in March of 2009. Acaba comes home today with a total of 138 days in space on his 2 flights. With the undocking of the Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft a short time ago, it left on board the International Space Station the newly comprised Expedition 33 crew under the command of Sonny Williams, the NASA flight engineer, now commander of the International Space Station. Williams will be the commander for the next 2 months until she actually the next 2 months until she herself comes home with her crewmates, Yuri Malenchenko of the Russian Federal Space Agency and Aki Hoshide of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They are now a 3-person crew for the next month or so until the arrival of their next trio of resident crewmates, Kevin Ford, the NASA flight engineer, who will launch in October on their Soyuz spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, with Russian cosmonauts Oleg Novitsky and Evgeny Tarelkin, who will join Williams, Malenchenko, and Hoshide as part of the Expedition 33 crew. Williams took over command of the International Space Station on Saturday afternoon in a short ceremony. It was an emotional ceremony in which she graciously accepted command of the International Space Station from Padalka, the off-going Expedition 32 commander and the only 3-time commander in the history of the International Space Station. Let's take a look back at yesterday's change of command ceremony.
Okay, it's a special day today, and before changing command, I would like to say some words in address to all people who participated in our mission preparation, all ground teams. I'm speaking about MCC Houston, Huntsville, Munich, and the entire ESA, Tsukuba, JAXA, MCC Moscow. This is my 3rd flight as a crew commander on board ISS, and I know that you are very, very professional on the ground, but nevertheless, during this expedition 32, you exceeded all our extraordinary expectations by keeping us in a good mood, by supporting us, but resolving all tiny problems because we had no big ones. Thank you very much to all people. And I would like to express my gratefulness to my crewmates for keeping great psychological climate in the crew, sharing everything between of us. We got along very well. Thank you very much to everybody on the ground. And it's time for Expedition 32 to hand over command to the new crew commander, Sunita Williams.
Well, thank you, Gennady, and thank you, everybody. I think we're about ready to hand over. We have one more day as 32, and then we'll start 33 after the hatch closes tomorrow. Again, just like Gennady said, I want to thank everybody on the ground for preparing us, but most of all, for the last 2 months, and would like to thank our 32 crewmates here who have taught us how to live and work in space, and of course to have a lot of fun up in space. And particularly Gennady, I just wanted to say one thing that that's been, I think, the way you've worked is you pay more attention to the people that work with you and for you than the people you work for. And that's, I think, universal leadership. And I appreciate all the lessons learned. And again, all the great humor that we've had up here. It's been a lot of fun. And that's mostly because of you and your crew. And we hope, as our crew, Aki and Yuri and myself, to maintain that and pass that on to Kevin, Oleg, and Yevgeny when they get here. So thank you.
And guys, thanks so much for
Houston,
letting us be a part of that.
How was that?
Thanks so much for letting us be a part of that. And Station Houston.
That was yesterday, Saturday afternoon, as Suni Williams accepted command of the International Space Station to become the second female commander of the complex. Peggy Whitson was the first. Now, Suni Williams in charge of station operations for the next 2 months until she and her crewmates, Yuri Malenchenko and Aki Hoshide, are scheduled to land on November 12th just after daybreak, not far from where Joe Akaba, Gennady Padalka, and Sergei Revin are headed a short time from now. We're about 15 minutes away from the deorbit burn. Today's activities began at about 12:30 p.m. Central Time, just over 8 hours ago, when the crews bid farewell to one another in a brief ceremony at the hatchway to the Soyuz spacecraft while it was still attached to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Williams on the left, Hoshide in the center, Malenchenko on the right, first greeted by Sergei Revin, then Akaba, and then finally Padalka, the off-going three-time commander of the International Space Station. A final opportunity for hugs and well wishes before that trio entered the Soyuz spacecraft to begin its preparations. The hatch actually closed to the Soyuz spacecraft at 3:12 p.m. Central Time. That was followed by leak checks to ensure a tight seal between the Soyuz and the Russian segment of the International Space Station before that passageway that you see the crew members in was depressurized in advance of the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station. Final chance to wave goodbye to one another as the crews bid farewell for the final time, leaving Williams, Malenchenko, and Hoshide behind as a three-person crew for the next month or so. Finally, after all the leak checks were completed, the crew on board the Soyuz donned their Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted leak checks to make sure they had a good integrity for those suits. And then at 6:09 p.m. Central Time, right on time, as the Soyuz spacecraft passed directly over Nairobi, Kenya, undocking occurred, physical separation of the Soyuz vehicle from the Poisk module of the International Space Station. Springs on either side of the docking interface pushed off against one another to enable the Soyuz to back away from Poisk at a rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. 3 minutes after the undocking, a separation burn of 15 seconds in duration was executed by Padalka, enabling the Soyuz to begin an opening rate that resulted in the Soyuz being at the position it is as we speak, some 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station, as countdown clocks tick backward to the deorbit burn that will occur about 12 minutes from now. Again, this is a replay of the undocking of the Soyuz vehicle from the Poisk module that took place at 6:09 p.m. Central Time, 7:09 p.m. Eastern Time, while the two craft flew high over Nairobi, Kenya. So with everything in order, the stage is set for the deorbit burn of the Soyuz TMA-04M at 8:56 and 18 seconds p.m. Central Time. This will be a 4-minute, 16-second retrograde maneuver, the firing of the Soyuz engines to slow the Soyuz down by 115.2 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. As we mentioned, helicopters carrying search and recovery personnel are airborne from the staging city of Kustanai, just over the Russian-Kazakh border, heading for the landing site just north of Arkelik. At the time of the deorbit burn coming up in just a few minutes, the NASA personnel who were forwardly deployed to Arkelik in the wee hours Sunday morning U.S. time, Sunday afternoon Kazakhstan time, the day before landing in Kazakhstan. Those helicopters will be airborne from Arkelik itself. All the helicopters to join one another in a circular horseshoe racetrack pattern around the landing site at the time that the Soyuz is descending under its main parachute. So the road home for Padalka, Akaba, and Revan begins shortly with the deorbit burn. Again, that will be a 4-minute, 16-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines. That will enable the Soyuz to enter the Earth's atmosphere. Atmospheric entry of the descent module will be followed by the deployment of the drogue chute, followed by the main chute. The command to open up the parachutes to be offered at 9:38 p.m. Central Time. That drogue chute, again, as you see in this animation, followed by the main chute. The drogue chute is then cut away pyrotechnically. Just a few seconds before touchdown, the soft landing engines or final braking rockets are fired to slow the descent down once again, and the Soyuz will be home. Landing time scheduled at 9:52 and 35 seconds p.m. Central Time this evening, 1 hour, 4 minutes from now. So we're about 8 minutes away now from the deorbit burn. The flight controllers, the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, talking directly to Gennady Padalka and his crewmates, telling them a short time ago to keep offering reports, keep talking to us all the way through the descent, even though communications may be choppy at times because of the altitude of the station relative to the antennas on the Soyuz spacecraft and the plasma of entry, the heat buildup around the spacecraft that sometimes blocks communications for short periods of time. Aboard the International Space Station itself, Sonny Williams, along with Malenchenko and Hoshide, will be jammed into the cupola of the International Space Station, attempting to see, perhaps, if conditions permit, the re-entry of their colleagues as they enter the Earth's atmosphere, perhaps an opportunity, if conditions permit, to photograph and take video of the plasma trail as the Soyuz enters the atmosphere, honed in on the landing site just north of Arkelik. Once the Soyuz touches down, the search and recovery helicopters will begin to land in sequential fashion. The first helicopters to land will include technicians and specialists from RSC Energia, who will be first at the landing site to begin the process of safing the vehicle and extracting the crew from the Soyuz spacecraft. Depending on whether the Soyuz lands upright or on its side will make a difference in which hatch is open on the Soyuz vehicle to extract the crew. They will be placed in special reclining chairs near the capsule to have an opportunity to orient themselves back and become acclimated once again to a gravity environment before they're carried in those chairs inside a nearby inflatable medical tent that will be erected in the minutes that will follow landing. The crew will remove their Sokol launch and entry suits, be helped into more comfortable flight suits, and then will board individual helicopters for the 1 hour, 50-minute flight back to Kustanai, where they will be separated from one another. Padalka and Revan to board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for the flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside their training base at Star City, Russia. Joe Akaba will join his NASA landing team colleagues to board a NASA Gulfstream jet at the Kustanai Airport for the flight back to Ellington Field in Houston.
Понял. А показания РУ какие? Понял. А показания РУ какие? Показания РУ WA1 минус 65 и второй минус 81. Но они скачут. То есть вот первый вот в районе 65, а второй в районе 81-2. Второй что-то не похож на правду.
Coming up on the 4-minute mark till the deorbit burn begins, as the International Space Station and the Soyuz vehicle, 12 kilometers apart, approach the southwest coast of South America, flying over the southern tip of Chile.
Схему?
This deorbit burn once again will be 4 minutes, 16 seconds in duration to slow the Soyuz vehicle down by 115.2 meters per second, enabling it to begin its descent out of orbit for the trip back into the Earth's atmosphere.
If the others have the green light on.
Горят.
Valid.
Так, хорошо.
Okay.
Кабели от усилителей мощности, которые номер 10.
Next, the cables from the amplifiers by number 10 and 11.
Точник.
Are they connected, mated?
Так, секундочку, что это за 10?
Stand by. What are you talking about? 10, 11.
Это кабели от усилительной мощности.
These are the cables.
3 minutes away from the initiation of the deorbit burn, the sun is up at the landing site on the steppe of Kazakhstan, just north of Arkelik.
I see.
Helicopters en route from Kustanai, the staging city, toward the landing site. Just moments from now, the other helicopters will be airborne from a remote strip in Arkelik, also heading for the landing site to join up. All the helicopters then will be in position to greet the 3 returning crew members.
А7 подключен.
Yes.
Кабель, который стыкуется.
And A7 is connected to the cable.
Also airborne in the vicinity of the landing site, Russian Antonov fixed-wing aircraft, one of which will serve as an airborne command relay center for data, telemetry, and voice from the spacecraft itself as it approaches the landing site.
A2 and A3.
All of that information to be relayed from the Antonov back to the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov.
Correct.
А переключатели А1 и А4
And A1 and A2 switches
на 11.
are to the left.
2 minutes away from the deorbit burn now, everything looking good on board the Soyuz spacecraft.
Exactly so.
And as mentioned before, the Russian flight controllers have advised Gennady Padalka to keep providing reports all the way through entry, even if communications are lost or are choppy at times.
По-прежнему у нас изменений нет никаких.
And no changes on ARU.
Что мы видим?
Are there? What do you see?
АРУ, да, без изменений.
ARU, no changes.
первый 66-60.
As I said, the first one is 66-64, and the second one 79-80.
An eventful stay on orbit about to conclude for Gennady Padalka, Joe Acaba, and Sergei Revin as they begin the trip home 1 minute away from the deorbit burn.
52.
And the second one is 52. 48, 50, 52.
Ну, сейчас, секундочку, я сейчас подумаю. Может быть, снова на имитатор переключимся.
All right, let me think. Maybe we'll have to switch back to the imitator.
1 minute before SKD. So GDO parameters are nominal. So we're waiting for the cover opening, and as soon as it is open, then we will see. Copy. The SKD cover is open. The display control.
The International Space Station and the Soyuz vehicle passing over southern Argentina,
Okay, copy.
about to begin a southwest and
repeat that
northeasterly track across the South Atlantic.
So did you
Standing
issue
by
the
for the
three
initiation of the deorbit burn.
No, it was already lit. Okay, copy. It is lit. It is lit. So it's too early. 10 seconds before the activation. Be ready. So SKD activation is on. 040.
And Gennady Padalka reports, and the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control confirms the deorbit burn is underway on time. Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Acaba heading home after 125 days in space.
Acceleration. So 13, 5. 10 meters, 25 seconds. 30 seconds, 13 meters. 045 is acceleration.
And with the initiation of the deorbit burn, the first of the helicopters that were forwardly positioned in Arkalyk are now airborne, heading for the landing site.
20 meters, 47 seconds. 25 meters, 57 seconds is the engine is operating. Oxidizer is nominal. I confirm. 30 meters. 1 minute, 10 seconds.
3 minutes to go in this deorbit burn, retrograde maneuver. 4 minutes, 16-second retrograde firing to enable the Soyuz to drop out of orbit.
3:45, 12 and 13, 1:30. Everything is nominal. SKD is nominal. 45 meters. 1 minute 42. 0:45 is the acceleration. So 50 meters, 1 minute 53. Oxidizer is nominal. Spherical tanks are nominal. 12 and 13. 55 meters, 2:04. 0:45 is acceleration. The burners are nominal. 60 meters, 2:15. 65 meters, 2:25. The burners are 7:22. Parameters GDU are nominal. 70 meters, 2:35. Burners are 7:13:22. 75, 2:47.
So far, so good in the final minute of this deorbit maneuver.
Acceleration 0:45, 80 meters, 2:59. Burners 12, 6, 12, 2. 85 meters, 309. Oxidizer is nominal. Burners to 12, 7, 13, 2, 90 meters, 319. Everything is nominal. SKD is nominal. 2613 and 2 are burners. 95 and 5, 330. SKD's operation is nominal parameters and nominal acceleration is 04645, 101 meters, 344. The burners are nominal, copy. 105 meters, 351.
110 meters, 0.46 acceleration. Everything is within the norm. Yes, GECA has been issued. KSD was open. The thermal sensor was off. Moscow, if you can read us. We have separation, I guess. So we are monitoring the pressure.
And confirmation received that the deorbit burn is complete with all of the parameters normal, 115.2 meters per second, delta V as they call it, or change in velocity at delta velocity. The burn started on time. 4 minutes, 16-second retrograde maneuver. Soyuz soon to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. The timeline for this point, the next major milestone, will occur as the Soyuz spacecraft is at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth. That will be at the point at which the three sections of the Soyuz pyrotechnically separate, that module separation to occur at 9:25 and 29 seconds p.m. Central Time, about 24 minutes from now. The forward section, called the orbital module, that contains the avionics and the forward docking probe, and the rear section, the instrumentation and propulsion module, where the propellant tanks and the engines are located, that will all separate from the center section, that is the descent module, in which the three crew members are strapped in to their respective seats in their Sokol launch and entry suits. The descent module on the far left, flight engineer Sergei Revin serving as the board engineer tonight. The center seat, of course, belongs to Gennady Padalka, the Soyuz commander. The right seat is housed by Joe Akaba, the NASA flight engineer.
The control point.
The separation of modules, again, will set the stage for atmospheric entry and the beginning of the repellent of the heat buildup around the Soyuz heat shield and the plasma trail as the Soyuz barrels its way into the upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere, heading for the landing site north of Arkalyk, Kazakhstan. As you can see in this animation, following atmospheric entry, the next major milestone is the command to open the parachutes. First a drogue chute, followed by that sprawling main chute. The drogue chute is then cut away. The command to open parachutes occurs about 14 minutes before touchdown. The braking rockets or soft landing engines fire just a moment or two before touchdown, and the Soyuz will be home to complete the mission of Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Akaba, who started off launching as part of Expedition 31, then transitioning to the Expedition 32 crew, coming home today after 125 days in space, 123 days aboard the International Space Station. Once again, the sun is up at the landing site in Kazakhstan on Monday morning over there. Everything is shaping up for a very smooth landing for this Soyuz spacecraft. The weather is excellent, just some scattered clouds, almost no wind at all at this hour. Temperatures will be in the low to mid 60s Fahrenheit. An ideal day for a homecoming for these three crew members who began their journey to the International Space Station with a launch in brilliant sunshine from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on May 15th, arriving 2 days later, pressing right into activity. The first major activity for Akaba, Revan, and Padalka once they arrived at the station was to join their former crewmates on board, Oleg Kononenko, Don Pettit, and Andrei Kuipers, and the arrival of the first world's first commercial cargo vehicle to the space station, the SpaceX Dragon craft, that arrived about a week or so after Padalka, Revan, and Akaba arrived on board. Padalka joined Yuri Malenchenko for a spacewalk out of the Russian segment of the International Space Station the third week in August, and Akaba choreographed two spacewalks conducted by Sonny Williams and Aki Hoshide to replace a failed power relay unit on the truss of the International Space Station at the end of August and the beginning of September. Akaba also responsible for quite a bit of robotics work. Of course, research continued unabated on board the International Space Station throughout all of this period of virtually unprecedented activity for these crewmates on board the International Space Station. Now Sonny Williams, the second female commander of the complex, who took over command of the station yesterday, joined by Yuri Malenchenko and Aki Hoshide, a three-person crew on board the orbital outpost for the next month or so as they await the arrival of their next trio of resident crewmates, Kevin Ford, Oleg Novitsky, and Evgeny Tarelkin, who are scheduled to launch in October from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
755, copy. We have
all of the helicopters are airborne from their respective staging sites in Kustanai and Arkalyk, heading for a convergence around the landing site to the north of Arkalyk. The actual landing site is some 40 statute miles to the north of Arkalyk, a stone's throw from that remote town. Everything in good shape on board the Soyuz vehicle. Gennady Padalka transitioning the control panel, the Neptune panel as it is called, on the Soyuz TMA spacecraft to landing telemetry as he presides once again over the landing of a Soyuz vehicle on this his fourth trip back from space. Here in Mission Control in Houston, everything quiet as the flight control team here works along with their Russian counterparts, monitoring the descent of the Soyuz back toward the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, we're about 16 minutes away from the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz that will set the stage for the Soyuz having its heat shield exposed in the direction of travel to ablate the fiery heat of reentry. as the Soyuz reaches the first traces of Earth's atmosphere at about 9:28 p.m. Central Time at an altitude of some 400,000 feet above the Earth.
Альтаир, ЦУПа Москвы.
Altair is Moscow. Go ahead, Moscow.
Напоминаю вам, перед разделением
A reminder,
тангенты, клавиши передачи.
prior to the separation,
Далее вести нажатием тангенты без фиксатора.
to keep detailed commentary without keeping the button depressed on the push to talk button.
Ждем несколько разделения минус 6 минут.
All right.
Команда на включение.
We are waiting for the T separation minus 6 minutes. We are waiting for KSS auto mode, and we'll report once we have it. Copy.
And a friendly reminder to Gennady Padalka from the flight control team and Korolyov at the Russian Mission Control Center to keep talking, keep the commentary up. They want Padalka to provide the play-by-play of all of the action that's going on aboard the Soyuz.
Copy.
Padalka reporting that everybody feels great. Some 12 minutes away now from the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. while Padalka, Revan, and Akaba continue their journey home aboard their Soyuz spacecraft. On board the International Space Station, the Expedition 33 crew, now under the command of NASA's Sonny Williams, eagerly watching and listening as the minutes tick away towards touchdown, some 37 minutes from now, of their colleagues, who they bid farewell to just a few short hours ago. Monday will be an off-duty day for Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide aboard the International Space Station, now a three-person crew for the next month or so, until the arrival of their next trio of colleagues, NASA's Kevin Ford and Russian cosmonauts Oleg Novitsky and Evgeny Tarelkin.
Go ahead, Moscow. Can you read us loud and clear? We read you, Moscow. We read you. So KSS is in auto. In a couple of minutes, we will close the pressurized helmets, and then I'll report. Copy.
Ориентацию проконтролировать не можете, так как в тени, да?
And you cannot monitor the attitude right now because you're on the orbital shadow. We are. So as soon as we get a possibility, we'll let you know. Copy.
The Soyuz vehicle and the International Space Station now approaching the west coast of Africa, moving from southwest to northeast. The station will continue its journey on while the Soyuz vehicle barrels toward its touchdown on the steppe of Kazakhstan, landing just 35.5 minutes from now. We're about 8 minutes away from module separation. Once again, this is a pyrotechnic activity that's automatically controlled by the Soyuz onboard computers, separating the upper section, or the orbital module, and the lower section, which is the instrumentation and propulsion module, from the center section called the descent module, in which Padalka in the center seat as Soyuz commander, flanked on his left by Sergei Revin and on his right by NASA's Joe Akaba, are strapped into their seats in their Sokol launch and entry suits, just a couple of minutes away from closing the pressurized visors on their helmets at the time of module separation.
Moscow, Altair, all three crew members close their pressurized helmets. Copy.
And confirmation that Padalka, Revin, and Akaba have now closed the visors on their helmets. This preparatory to the separation of modules.
Altair, we're waiting For the separation command to go through. Yes, copy, and we'll report to you once it's done.
About 2 minutes after module separation, the Soyuz will fly into an orbital sunrise, as will the International Space Station as well. Helicopters deployed from the staging city in Kustanai and from the forward staging site in Arkelik are descending on the landing site to greet the Soyuz spacecraft as it descends under its main chute a short time from now. The Russian search and recovery forces, joined by a NASA landing team contingent led by Mike Serber, the director of human spaceflight operations in Russia, Kirk Shireman, the International Space Station deputy program manager, the new NASA chief astronaut Bob Behnken, Peggy Whitson, who was the first female commander of the International Space Station, and the former chief astronaut, NASA flight surgeons, and NASA public affairs officer Josh Byerly, and NASA headquarters photographer Carla Chofi, all heading for the landing site to greet the crew and recover Joe Akaba.
Altair, you can look at the BNO display. It will give you the maximum G load. Yes, we looked. It shows 4.3 G. Altair, a reminder, if the settings on the control panel will not rewrite, then you can do it manually, and it will have to be written down within 1 minute after you receive the Delta TVM values. Copy.
Less than 3 minutes away from module separation, so we'll be standing by for confirmation of that. Meanwhile, the International Space Station has maneuvered into the proper orientation to improve communications relay between the Soyuz spacecraft and the antennas on the Soyuz and the S-band communication system with the International Space Station, relaying telemetry and voice back to the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft in the vicinity of the landing site.
We are seeing the controlled descent mode. Copy. We're standing by for the gyro confirmation. Yes. We'll report at 24:15.
Commands being sent by Gennady Padalka to the onboard computers that will calibrate the Soyuz gyroscopes for inertial guidance capability just prior to the separation of modules and the descent module flying on its own a short time from now with the 3 crew members inside.
Connected. The separation 25-29. Please remember to press the push-to-talk button.
Coming up on module separation about 30 seconds from now.
Altair is Moscow. How do you read us? Altair is Moscow. How do you read us? Altair is Moscow. How do you read us?
At this point, the module separation should have been completed, but this loss of communications had been expected. The next ground station pass about 6.5 minutes from now.
Altair is Moscow. How do you read us?
We have a report from the Russian interface officer here in Mission Control that the space station crew heard through a relay on board from the Soyuz spacecraft that module separation was normal, but we're standing by for confirmation from the crew. And assuming all of that is correct and nominal, we should be seeing the Soyuz entering the Earth's atmosphere right around now.
How do you read us?
Less than 24 minutes until touchdown. Badalka, Revan, and Akaba should be feeling the first sensation of Earth's gravity for the first time since May 15th when they were launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. And we now have received reports from flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center that the module separation was normal. So everything on track. The Soyuz spacecraft now entering the Earth's atmosphere. Entry guidance is expected to begin just a few seconds from now.
Altair, Moscow, how do you read?
Again, this intermittent and periodic loss of communications expected as heat builds around the Soyuz spacecraft during this plasma buildup around the heat shield, which repels the heat, of course, as the Soyuz barrels toward its landing site just north of Arkalyk in north-central Kazakhstan.
Altair, Moscow, how do you read?
This is animation of the Soyuz as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, deploying its parachute. That command to deploy the parachute about 7 minutes away.
Altair, Moscow. How do you read? Altair, MCC, Moscow. How do you read?
We would expect that communications will improve a short time from now after peak heating around the Soyuz spacecraft decreases and the Soyuz approaches the area where the fixed-wing Antonov aircraft is located, serving as a flying command and relay center. Less than 21 minutes until touchdown. The Soyuz spacecraft should be flying just to the northwest of the Caspian Sea, heading for its landing site in Kazakhstan. Russian Mi-8 helicopters en route to form a racetrack pattern around the landing zone to begin the process of landing in sequential pattern to begin the recovery and extraction of the crew just minutes after they touch down. We're about 5 minutes away from the command to begin the deployment of the parachutes. First, there are 2 pilot parachutes that will be deployed, the second of which actually extracts the drogue chute. The drogue chute is then released. It measures 24 square meters, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. The main parachute is then released, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.5 meters per second. The harnesses on that chute first allow the Soyuz to descend at an angle of 30 degrees to expel any residual heat. Then it shifts the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent for its soft landing engines to fire just a moment or two before touchdown. Again, we had expected this loss of communications between the Soyuz vehicle due to the altitude of the International Space Station, the geometry of the Soyuz antennas relative to the S-band communications on the International Space Station, and the effects of heating on the Soyuz spacecraft as it heads toward its landing site.
MCC Moscow, how do you read?
Altair,
Altair, Moscow. How do you read?
About 3 minutes to go until the command is issued to open the parachutes on the Soyuz vehicle. Again, the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft in the proximity of the landing zone will soon begin to receive direct reports from Gennady Padalka aboard the Soyuz descent module. Time to touchdown, less than 17 minutes.
Altair, Moscow.
Слышно.
How do you read?
Московская МКС, канал СГ-1.
This view from a camera overlooking the large International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, as we stand by for confirmation of the command that will initiate the process of deploying the parachutes on the Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft. The separation of the modules, the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft, was confirmed by the Soyuz flight director there in Korolyov and was relayed to the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft hovering over the landing site. This is Mission Control Houston. The search and recovery forces at the landing site in Kazakhstan have reported visual observation of the chutes deployed on the Soyuz TMA-04M. So everything going per the plan. 13 minutes until touchdown. Chute deploy is complete. The Soyuz on target for a bullseye landing at the landing site just to the north of the remote town of Arkalyk. At this point, most of the search and recovery helicopters are already placed in the vicinity of the prime landing zone. They should be in sight of the Soyuz descending under its parachute a short time from now. Other helicopters will be arriving within minutes to join the first wave of helicopters. This is Mission Control Houston, the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft. Now in voice communications with the Soyuz spacecraft and Soyuz commander Gennady Padalka. We should be receiving live television from the landing site of the Soyuz descending under its parachute moments from now. Time to touchdown, 10 minutes, everything going by the book with the Soyuz descent for its landing just to the north of Arkalyk. Less than 9 minutes until touchdown. Now the Soyuz descending under its parachute, everything proceeding on track. All of the Soyuz systems in good shape. The crew reporting it's feeling well. Back to the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft flying along with Russian Mi-8 helicopters in the vicinity of the landing zone in north-central Kazakhstan, just north of Arkalyk. This is Mission Control Houston, 6.5 minutes until touchdown. There's our first video of the Soyuz TMA-04M descending under its main parachute on a cloudless morning on Monday morning in Kazakhstan. It is 8:46 in the morning on Monday at the landing site. Gennady Padalka in the center seat of the descent module as the Soyuz commander, flanked on his left by Sergei Revin, Joe Akaba on his right, just minutes away from touchdown to complete 125 days in space, 123 days aboard the International Space Station. The weather at the landing site is ideal. As you can see, not a cloud in the sky, very light winds to greet the 3 returning Expedition 32 crew members. Temperatures in the low to mid 60s. Gennady Padalka wrapping up his 4th flight into space, having chalked up 711 days in space on those 4 missions, ranking him 4th on the all-time list of most experienced space travelers behind Sergei Krikalev, Alexander Kaleri, and Sergei Avdeyev. Joe Acaba wrapping up his 2nd flight into space, 138 days in all, including 13 days aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in March of 2009 on the STS-119 mission. Sergei Revin completing his 1st flight into space, and of course those 125 days. About 4 minutes until touchdown. Soyuz now just a couple of kilometers above the landing site. Again, descending straight and narrow towards what is expected to be an on-target touchdown. Momentary loss of video from the landing site through the relay that is provided through a complex series of satellite feeds back to the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. About 2 minutes until touchdown. All of the search and recovery helicopters are on station, hovering around the landing site. Just a few hundred meters off the ground, we've reacquired our live television from the landing site, standing by for touchdown. And once again, the final moments of the descent of the Soyuz spacecraft under its chute. You can see one of the Russian search and recovery helicopters that will land within seconds after touchdown. And standing by for touchdown. And touchdown confirmed. The soft landing engines firing. The touchdown has occurred at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, 10:53 p.m. Eastern Time, just north of Arkalyk, Kazakhstan. Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Acaba back on Earth. The first all-terrain vehicles and other recovery personnel are now in the process of making their way toward the capsule, and you'll be seeing the helicopters beginning to land as well as the process of safing the vehicle and extracting the crew gets underway. Once again, the Soyuz TMA-04M, a tried and true vehicle operating perfectly from the time it launched back on May 15th to carry Padalka, Revin, and Acaba to the International Space Station, returns home this evening for a bullseye landing at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, 8:53 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Monday morning. Everything with tonight's deorbit and landing activities went by the book. The two crews, the departing crew of Padalka, Revin, and Acaba, said farewell to Sonny Williams, the new space station commander, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide. They said farewells at 12:30 p.m. Central Time, some 8.5 hours ago. Hatch closure was marked at 3:12 p.m. Central Time as Padalka, Revin, and Acaba made their way inside the Soyuz vehicle, closed the hatch, and began the process of leak checks to ensure a tight seal between the Soyuz and its docking port at the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The crew climbed into their launch and entry suits, the Sokol suits, with undocking occurring over Nairobi, Kenya at 6:09 p.m. Central Time, 7:09 p.m. Eastern Time. A separation burn opened up a rate and a distance between the Soyuz and the International Space Station, ultimately of about 12 kilometers for the deorbit burn that got underway on time at 8:56 p.m. Central Time. It was a 4-minute, 16-second retrograde firing that enabled the Soyuz to begin its slide out of orbit for its entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. All of the entry milestones were accomplished on time, setting the stage for landing that you saw just a moment ago at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, 10:53 p.m. Eastern Time, just north of the town of Arkalyk.
МКС по Москве в канале СГ-1 по источнику.
Yes, this is station. Go ahead.
Как там заключительные операции прошли?
How did the close-up operations go? Is everything nominal? Were you able to archive all the data? Affirmative. The data is on OCA for Down Lake?
По названию
Same name as the radiogram number.
и все остальное.
Everything else has been completed. Everything's been stowed.
Спасибо большое.
Okay, copy. Thank you very much.
Полета.
Have a great rest of your mission and take care. Yes, thank you for your support as well.
This is Mission Control Houston. The reports from the landing site indicating that the Soyuz, in fact, did tip over on its side, not an uncommon occurrence. Some land upright, some do tip over either because of winds or the angle of the actual touchdown. So the actual extraction of the crew will begin as the search and recovery helicopters make their way toward the descent module to begin securing and safing the spacecraft, and then opening the side hatch to begin removing the crew one by one from their respective seats and placing them in reclining chairs by the spacecraft so that they have a few minutes to acclimate to Earth's gravity. This is Mission Control Houston. The words on the front screen of the Russian Mission Control Center in Cyrillic, Jest Posadka, the Russian words for they've landed, as they did some 9 minutes ago at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, 10:53 p.m. Eastern Time. The reports from the Search and recovery forces on the ground at the landing site indicate that the Soyuz tipped over on its side, which is fairly typical for Soyuz landings. As we await additional television from the landing site with the helicopters for the search and recovery forces now making their way, landing in sequential fashion, and recovery personnel making their way toward the spacecraft to begin the process of safing the vehicle and extracting the crew. And now we're back with television from the landing site as technicians from RSC Energia begin the process of opening the hatch and extracting the crew.
Юрий Иванович, экипаж благополучно сел. Не знаю, довели вам уже информацию? Нет?
You can see the glare of the early morning sunlight on Monday morning at the landing site in Kazakhstan, where the temperature is in the low to mid 60s. A cloudless sky. A Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center photographer peering inside the open hatch to the Soyuz vehicle. The process of removing the crew from the Soyuz typically is a short one. The desire is to get the crew members out of the Soyuz as expeditiously as possible, placing them in their reclining chairs for a few minutes to acclimate to Earth's gravity before they are carried in those chairs to a nearby inflatable medical tent that's in the process of being erected as we speak. And there's our first view of Gennady Padalka, the Soyuz commander, veteran cosmonaut, as he sits in the bright sunshine of a Monday morning, having completed his 4th flight into space in 711 days, making him the 4th most experienced space traveler in history. And Padalka taking a sip of tea, which is customary for returning crew members at the landing site. The only 3-time commander of the International Space Station, smiling, waving. the rapidity of the arrival of the search and recovery personnel to begin the process of extracting the crew, indicative of how on target this landing was for the Soyuz spacecraft. Once again, the Soyuz spacecraft with Gennady Padalka, as you see in this live view from the landing site, along with his crewmates, Sergei Revin and Joe Akaba, landing on target at 9:53 p.m. Central Time. That is Alexander Poluchin, a member of the Rosaviatsia Search and Recovery Forces, talking to Padalka. Old colleagues, longtime colleagues. This video courtesy of the Russian Federal Space Agency. Once again, the search and recovery forces, RSC Energia vehicle personnel, still working on the extraction of Sergei Revin and Joe Akaba from the Soyuz spacecraft. Gennady Padalka, as is customary, due to the fact that he is in the center seat of the descent module, was the first to be extracted, having an opportunity to sit in balmy Monday morning weather in north-central Kazakhstan, just north of the town of Arkalyk. Once the crew members are all out of the Soyuz capsule, there is cargo, some minimal amount of cargo that is returned for both the Russian side and the U.S. side from the International Space Station to be removed from the Soyuz spacecraft and disposition for return to their respective locations. Once again, Padalka, Revin, and Akaba will be brought inside the inflatable medical tent. As is customary, they'll be carried in their reclining chairs to have initial medical exams and to have their Sokol launch and entry suits removed. They'll be adorned with more comfortable flight suit clothing, and then they'll board respective helicopters for a 1-hour, 50-minute flight back to the staging city of Kustanai. Padalka and Revin will board a Gagarin cosmonaut training center aircraft in Kustanai to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield just outside of their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow, while Joe Akaba boards a NASA Gulfstream jet at the Kustanai Airport to fly back with NASA personnel to Ellington Field near the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. The veteran Gennady Padalka sitting calmly and placidly at the landing site, waiting for his other crewmates to join him in reclining chairs. The Soyuz spacecraft operated to perfection all the way from the time it was launched back on May 15th to send Padalka, Revin, and Akaba to the International Space Station, docking on May 17th. The 4 months for these crew members on board coming to an end with their undocking from the International Space Station a little over 4 hours ago, setting the stage for the Deorbit burn that began an almost hour-long journey back through the Earth's atmosphere to the landing site just north of Arkalyk. Orbiting high overhead during all of this.
Как ваше самочувствие? Самочувствие прекрасно. Как проходил спуск? Что?
You both lift head up, astronauts and back to the car.
Он сам распределил практически приземление. И по перегрузке как была прогнозирована. Они уходили в атмосферу, поэтому всем огромное спасибо, кто готовил наш спуск, за надежность, за безопасность. Все великолепно.
Впечатления не изменились после очередной посадки, после встречи с Землей?
Нет, уже как привычка. 4-й раз как привычка.
Padalka answering some questions from members of the media at the landing site. Second crew member now out, and that would be Sergei Revin, we believe. The crew members who are situated in the left and right seats of the descent module take a few more minutes to extract than the commander, who is a straight shot out of the center seat through the hatch. And we are awaiting the extraction of Joe Akaba. Sergei Revin, the flight engineer, home after his first space flight, 125 days in space.
Normal.
Делайте второй замес, как чек. 145, 103, 86. Верните мне его машину. Смотри, покажите, покажите. Второй. По командиру готов. Второй этаж. Геннадий Иванович. Геннадий? Не, нормально, нормально. Саша, еще ты любишь?
Let me help.
Monday morning sunshine beaming down on Sergei Revin as he acclimates himself to a gravity environment for the first time in 4 months. And here comes Joe Akama as a flight engineer out of the Soyuz spacecraft, completing his second flight into space, 13 days aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in March of 2009 on the STS-119 mission, now home after 4 months aboard the International Space Station.
Roxana, Joe. Hey. Hi, Lisa. How are you? That's right, thank you.
Santa's here to help you.
Russian nurses and NASA medical personnel attending to Akaba. He is surrounded by NASA personnel. Mike Serber, the Director of Human Spaceflight Operations, not in the field of view at the moment. Peggy Whitson and Bob Bankin, the new NASA Chief Astronaut, standing behind Akaba. And with the extraction of Joe Akaba now in his reclining chair, we have NASA Public Affairs Officer Josh Byerly with us from the landing site just north of Arkalyk. Josh, if you can hear me, what's happening out there?
Well, Rob, we honestly could not have asked for better weather out here today. The temperature is really good. The crew is obviously enjoying this weather. Joe Akaba, as you just saw, just got pulled out a few minutes ago. I don't know if you guys saw it on TV or not, but the second they pulled him out, he gave a big giant thumbs up and said it's good to be home. So he's doing well. The NASA people are around him now. The rest of the crew seems to be doing fine as well. So all in all, a pretty beautiful and by the book day out here at this landing site.
Josh, we had excellent television most of the way down with a couple of dropouts of the Soyuz descending under the chute. It appeared to be an on-target bullseye touchdown.
Yeah, it was exactly on target according to the search and rescue forces out here. It was kind of, you and I have both done dozens of these landings, and I've never seen the amount of clarity that we had today in terms of all the helicopters got in this big circle, started flying around, and we actually saw the parachute and the Soyuz coming down, and we saw the soft engine thrusters there during that last split second. So, sometimes we get lucky and see that view, but today we had it for a pretty extended time, actually. So hopefully Carla Chofi, who's our photographer here, got some pretty good pictures for us.
And Josh, if you could outline for us from this point on what happens to the crew over the next several minutes, and going airborne once again to go back to Kustanai.
Yeah, the helicopters are actually all parked very close. Closer than what I've normally seen out here. The medical tent is probably only about 60 yards away. They're going to get the crew over there to the big orange medical tent, get them out of their suits pretty quickly. The flight doctors will take another look at them just to make sure that they're doing okay, and then we're all going to load up and head back to the airport at Kustanai. Now, anybody who has seen these landings before knows that there's a traditional ceremony that takes place back at the airport. They're going to have a shortened version of that ceremony today with all of the crew members, so we will have somewhat of a ceremony there at the airport, but not the full one that we typically get. The reason for that is they're just trying to get the crew comfortable, get them. They'll probably want to take a shower after they get back, and obviously Joe Acaba and the rest of us will get on the NASA plane and head back to Houston in short order, and Gennady Padalka and Sergei Revin will head back to Moscow within a couple of hours after we get back.
And we can see the crew now being hoisted in their reclining chairs to be brought inside the medical tent. It looks like an absolutely superb morning on Monday morning there weather-wise.
Yeah, last time I was here was Mike Fossum landing back in December or November, December last year, and that was quite a different experience than this time. So, if we could have them all like this, I think that we would all make that trade. But yeah, the weather's it's gorgeous. There's a light wind, and we're actually standing in a wheat field that looks like it's been harvested, but the ground is really good as well.
You should enjoy it, Josh, because the next time you do this, in about 2 months, you'll be covering Sonny Williams. There's a unique shot. We're watching Gennady Padalka signing his name to the Soyuz TMA-04M. Josh, the next time you do this in November, landing for Sonny Williams, Aki Hoshide, and Yuri Malenchenko will be just after sunrise in November. I don't think it's going to be quite as warm.
Yeah, I seem to attract the cold weather, but the one thing I do want to mention that I'm not sure that we talked about this yet or not, but the Russians are actually trying out some new versions of their all-terrain vehicles. These are much bigger, and we had a landing commission meeting yesterday that we had with them, and they mentioned that they were using some new equipment, so they're testing that out. And they're enormous vehicles. I've never seen them this large before, but they seem to have worked as expected.
The crew in the process of being carried now toward the medical tent. As you indicated, they're going to get out of their launch and entry suits into more comfortable clothing, and soon we'll begin yet another flight, this time a bit more mundane, in a Russian Mi-8 helicopter, respective helicopters back to Kustanai, and you'll be airborne before long. And this, I've not seen this tradition before, where actually all the crew members sign their names to the Soyuz spacecraft. Acaba about to pen his name to the side of the TMA-04M.
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen that before either. But they're actually moving them across. They're probably about 10 feet away from me right now. They're going to move them over into the medical tent. I know that you mentioned Bob Bacon is here, the new chief astronaut. He's sort of getting his trial run at this. This will be his responsibility. So Peggy Whitson is with him, kind of showing him the ropes and showing him what they need to do to support the crew as they come back. And of course, this will be Peggy's probably her last trip over here to do this. She's done numerous of these Soyuz landings and also the launches, but it's over to Bob now from this point on.
And Josh, as the crew is making their way inside the medical tent, information is always wonderful to come by, and from a variety of sources, we find out that the signing of their names on the spacecraft unique to this particular landing, because this spacecraft is going to be moved to the Shalkovsky Museum in Kaluga, Russia. The Shalkovsky Museum, named after the father of Russian spaceflight, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. So a very unique and historic moment for this crew to have the privilege of signing their names to their spacecraft that brought them home.
Yeah, that's quite a tradition. They've actually just rolled the Soyuz over vertical. It's amazing to see these guys do this. They basically just kind of manhandle it and roll it over. But they're already in the process of getting it ready to be hoisted up and put on, and they're going to obviously take it back. And we should be airborne back to Kuznai here within the next few minutes.
Josh Byerly at the landing site north of Arkalyk. You can see the panoramic view of some of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters, part of the search and recovery forces that helped to extract the Expedition 32 crew, Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Akaba, who are safely inside the medical tent for initial medical exams and to get into more comfortable clothing before they go airborne in respective helicopters back to Kustanay, Kazakhstan, the staging city for tonight's landing operations. Josh, I know you have to hitch a ride back to Kustanay yourself in your helicopter, so we wish you safe travels, and we'll see you back in Houston.
I'll see you back in Houston here in 2 hours, Rob. Thanks.
Josh Byerly at the landing site in Kazakhstan with his on-scene report. Everything went by the book in extremely smooth fashion as the crew is hale and hearty, safely outside of their Soyuz TMA spacecraft that brought them home, with the landing occurring just 30 minutes ago at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, 10:53 p.m. Eastern Time, which equates to 8:53 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Monday morning.
Что мне с тобой делать, скажи, а? Так отдернули. Забыл тоже нет?
Слушай, ты не видишь кого-то?
Может, какое-нибудь интервью из руководителя возьмем? Пока на некогда, мне обычно надо такое делать. Давай, я удерживаю рядом. Давай.
Не, подойди к нам.
Калинин в эфире, интервью будем брать на Калинина, звук потому что от него идет. В эфире. Если у тебя сейчас что, я просто не знаю. Сейчас тебя дам.
You can see in this view one of the all-terrain vehicles that's part of the search and recovery armada, if you will, to attend to the crew, backed up to the flap entrance to that inflatable medical tent. You can see as they open the door that each of the crew members is placed inside that all-terrain vehicle for the short ride of just a few yards to their respective helicopters so that they can board those helicopters for the flight back to Kustanay. And now you can see some photographs being taken of the Soyuz descent module, now rolled upright, as was reported a moment ago by NASA's Public Affairs Officer Josh Byerly at the landing site, while search and recovery personnel and RSE Energia engineers that are responsible for the vehicle attend to the spacecraft before it is transported back to Russia for post-flight analysis, and in this case to be housed in the Tsiolkovsky Museum in Kaluga, Russia. And a good view inside one of those all-terrain vehicles.
Нет, хорошо, смотри. Евлакин? Вася, а я с отблоком.
Continuing with live television courtesy of the Russian Federal Space Agency from the landing site north of Arkalyk. There it is, the Soyuz TMA-04M, the descent module that brought home Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Akaba to a pinpoint landing just to the north of the town of Arkalyk at 9:53 p.m. Central Time. It landed on its side, tipped over on its side after touchdown, and now has been rolled upright in good shape. The typical scorching and scarring, the effects of its fiery descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. The parachutes opened by the book, and the Soyuz gently descended to its touchdown, virtually right on the bullseye. Padalka, Revin, and Akaba now in the process of having their Sokol launch and entry suits removed. They'll be placed in more comfortable flight clothing for the helicopter flights of about an hour and 50 minutes in duration back to the staging city of Kustanai, which is some 400 kilometers or so to the north of the landing site. A short welcoming ceremony expected at the Kustanai airport before Padalka and Revin board the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for the flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield just outside of Star City, Russia, their training base at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. Joe Akaba to board a NASA Gulfstream jet at the Kustanai airport with his NASA landing team personnel to fly back to Ellington Field just outside of the Johnson Space Center.
Кожаные куртки пошли по этим, знаете? Проще флаг переставить.
Нет, все нормально.
Такой туалет.
Игорь, расслабьтесь, пока я перегоняю.
And you're watching now replays being provided to us from the search and recovery forces at the landing site. This video taken from one of the forward-placing helicopters showing the descent of the Soyuz spacecraft from their perspective as it was in the final minutes and seconds of descent to the landing site. This ought to give us a good view of the soft landing engines firing just a split second before touchdown. Again, this is a replay from one of the search and recovery helicopters as it flew nearby the Soyuz TMA-04M, descending toward its touchdown that occurred at 9:53 p.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston, watching additional replays of video that was taken by the search and recovery personnel on the ground at the landing site just north of Arkalyk, Kazakhstan. This video acquired just moments after the Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft touchdown at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, about 47 minutes ago. You can see one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters landing just a few yards away. You saw a moment or two ago some spectacular video taken from one of the forward-placing helicopters of the actual touchdown itself, the soft landing engines firing, and the Soyuz spacecraft, the chute billowing following the touchdown itself. With the Soyuz spacecraft having been placed in an upright position, additional personnel have erected the small ladder above the spacecraft that will assist in the extraction of cargo from the vehicle. This again is a replay. This is just prior to the opening of the hatch, as RSC Energia personnel worked a few minutes ago to open the hatch and then extract the crew members. Gennady Padalka, the Soyuz commander, was first out of the Soyuz, followed by flight engineer Sergei Revin and then NASA flight engineer Joe Akaba. They are all inside the inflatable medical tent, having been reported to be in good shape, as they will be donning more comfortable flight clothing after initial medical exams, and then flying in individual helicopters about an hour and 50 minutes to the staging city of Kustanai, just south of the Russian-Kazakh border.
сними у него камеру. Он пройдет, потом отдашь.
This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to receive television from the landing site for the Soyuz TMA-04M that brought home Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Acaba just about an hour ago. The crew was quickly extracted from the spacecraft, had an opportunity to spend a few minutes in reclining chairs nearby their Soyuz vehicle, the descent module that brought them home, for a pinpoint landing. The search and recovery forces and respective helicopters all landed within a few yards of the Soyuz vehicle. And the crew then was carried in their reclining chairs to the inflatable medical tent nearby, where they're being attended to, receiving initial medical exams and getting out of those Sokol launch and entry suits and into more comfortable flight clothing for a 1 hour, 50-minute helicopter ride back to the staging city of Kustanay, Kazakhstan. And as you can see, one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters now airborne from the landing site to return to Kustanay, Kazakhstan. In time, those helicopters will be airborne one by one to bring the search and recovery personnel and the 3 returning crew members back to Kustanay, where they will board respective aircraft, Gennady Padalka and Sergei Revin, to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City, Russia, for reunions with Russian space officials and their families. Joe Acaba to board a NASA Gulfstream jet in Kustanay with NASA landing personnel to return to Ellington Field near the Johnson Space Center.
В эфире на
This is Mission Control Houston. We have seen the last of our television from the landing site north of Arkalyk in Kazakhstan, where Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Akaba landed just over an hour ago at 9:53 p.m. Central Time, a bullseye touchdown for their Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft. Some of the search and recovery helicopters are now airborne, heading back to Kustanay, Kazakhstan. Within minutes, the 3 crew members will also be airborne in their respective helicopters for Kustanay to begin the journey home. Padalka and Revin to return to their training base at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. Joe Akaba to board a NASA plane for the flight back to Ellington Field outside of the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. The 125-day mission of Padalka, Revin, and Akaba ended flawlessly with an on-target touchdown in their Soyuz descent module. Everything went extremely smoothly from hatch closure to undocking to the deorbit burn to all of the entry timeline activities to their touchdown that completed their mission that began with their launch in that Soyuz spacecraft back on May 15th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Left aboard the International Space Station, the new Expedition 33 commander, Sonny Williams, joined by Aki Hoshide of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and Russian cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko. 2 months to go in their mission before they come home in similar fashion to a sunrise landing in Kazakhstan on the morning of November 12th. They'll be joined about a month from now by Kevin Ford of NASA and Russian cosmonauts Oleg Novitsky and Evgeny Tarelkin, who will be launched in October aboard their Soyuz TMA-06M spacecraft from Baikonur for a 2-day transit to the International Space Station to become part of the Expedition 33 crew. A couple of programming notes. On Monday morning, ISS Update will air at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, to recap all of this evening's activities and bring you all of the latest aboard the International Space Station, with an off-duty day on tap for the 3 crew members who will now tend to station activities over the course of the next month or so. ISS Update again will air at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And the Space Shuttle Endeavour, that has made it to the top of its 747 shuttle carrier aircraft at the Kennedy Space Center, was to have departed the Kennedy Space Center for Ellington Field in Houston for 2 days of public display on Monday morning. That departure was delayed 24 hours because of expected rain showers and bad weather here in the Houston area as the result of a frontal passage of a trough that is moving through southeast Texas that will exit the area sometime Monday afternoon. Tuesday morning looks like a better day. So the departure from the Kennedy Space Center of the Shuttle Endeavour will now take place on Tuesday, September 18th on NASA television, beginning at around 6:45 a.m. Central Time. Its arrival at Ellington Field in Houston, also to be broadcast live at around approximately 10:20 a.m. Central Time, 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday morning, September 18th. It is in transit to California, where it will land at Dryden Flight Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and then fly from Dryden to Los Angeles International Airport to be transported on the ground to the California Science Museum, where it will take a permanent residency as a permanent display of inspiration to future generations. Again, all of that activity delayed 24 hours because of inclement weather here in Houston. The flight from the Kennedy Space Center to Ellington Field in Houston now scheduled for Tuesday morning, September 18th. And one other programming note, our post-landing video file that will recap all of tonight's landing activities, plus all of the post-landing activities to take place yet tonight in Kustanay, Kazakhstan, will air a special video file to air on NASA television on Monday morning at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, right before our Monday morning ISS update commentary hour. So you'll want to tune in for that. A lot of activity on tap for Monday morning and Tuesday morning as well, as life goes on in the wake of the on-target landing tonight by Gennady Padalka, Sergei Revin, and Joe Acaba. Padalka, Revin, and Acaba safely back on Earth after 125 days in space, 123 days aboard the International Space Station. And that will wrap up our coverage of the homecoming of the Expedition 32 crew. For all of our colleagues out there, both in Russia, in Kazakhstan, here in the United States, we wish you a good night. This is Mission Control in Houston.